I think it's really helpful to know what the symptoms of ADHD are. And then that way, if you've been thinking, well, maybe I have it, you will be armed with some information to consult with a medical professional. What's in the DSM? And the DSM is I'm gonna have to read it because I always forget what it stands for. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. Isn't that lovely? It's what professionals use to diagnose mental health issues, which I already have an issue with because I choose to believe that my ADHD is a superpower. Granted, there are some challenges, but that's just kind of my mindset around it. And I know not everybody agrees with me. I want you to also, keep in mind that I am not an expert. My knowledge comes from, reading just about everything that I can get my hands on, talking to, everybody that I know that has ADHD, as well as professionals. Now, the experts that I really do value, that I read a lot from are, and I think I mentioned this before, so Ed Hallowell and John Rady. John Rady also has a great book called Spark that is all about exercise and brain health. And it really touches on ADHD and how, what exercise does is it increases the dopamine in our brain. And that's what's going on with us. We're not making enough dopamine. And I really like these guys, and I like them because they both have ADHD, and I think they're very positive about it. I think Ed Hallowell talks about, the superpower abilities of some of the symptoms of ADHD. And then there's Russell Barkley, who I trust him. Wait, I can never get this right. I totally trust him as far as anything to do, especially with kids and ADHD. And then there's a woman named Terry Matlin. And if you have the inattentive form of ADHD, and we're going to talk about that, I think this is a great place to start as well with her. And so what Russell Barkley has done is he developed 9 criteria specifically for adult ADHD, which I think is really useful, if you're trying to decide, should I go further and have myself evaluated or should I not? So I'm going to pull, because I'm going to go through some lists, a lot of lists now. I'm going to pull this up on my iPad. Let me tell you first. So what he says is if you check off 4 of the first 7 symptoms or 6 of the 9, you're likely to have ADHD, so consult a medical professional. You easily get distracted by extraneous stimuli or irrelevant thought. You make decisions impulsively. And impulsive, it has such a negative connotation, but it can be as simple as you just make decisions really quickly. You have difficulty stopping activities or behavior when they're engaging and of interest to you. You start a project or task without reading or listening to directions carefully. I am allergic to directions, by the way. I just feel my way through that. You fail to follow through on promises or commitments you make to others. You have trouble doing things in their proper order or sequence. You drive much faster than others, or if you don't drive, you have difficulty engaging in leisure activities or doing fun things quietly. You have difficulty sustaining attention in tasks or recreational activities. You have difficulty organizing tasks and activities. If you checked off 4 of the first 7 symptoms or 6 of the 9, you're likely to have ADHD. So, consult a medical professional if you're discovering that, you just feel like there's something wrong. This is the thing though, everyone has times where they get distracted or they act impulsively or they lose their car keys or they can't remember why the hell they walked in the kitchen, right? And so what the oh my God, I forgot the word is, the neurotypical population will say is that, oh no, that's just a disorder of modern life. We just have too much things going on. There's no such thing as ADHD. Well, this is what you're looking for. It can't be something that just happens every once in a while, okay? Number 1, you're looking for the number of traits that you have, so the number of symptoms. You're looking for the duration of time that you've had them. You have to have had them for at least 6 months. And I'm going to talk more about when they need to kind of start presenting. Number 3, the intensity that you have these symptoms. How often are you distracted? How often do you find yourself working only to discover that it's now 2 a.m. and you started at 9 and you feel like it's like 10 or 11? The final part of ADHD, as far as the whole puzzle is, you have to have had these symptoms, at least some of them, as a child. The DSM says that these symptoms must be present prior to the age of 12. Russell Barkley, however, says, and I've kind of noticed this about women, he says that the symptoms have to be present from the time you're 16. Just because you were not diagnosed as a child doesn't mean that you don't have ADHD. Just because you're having less of a problem with it today with these issues than you had when you were a child doesn't mean you don't have ADHD. Ask your parents or siblings, what do they remember about you? So I'm going to talk about what are the symptoms of ADHD, what do they look like in real life? And again, remember every brain is wired differently. So you may be able to relate to a lot of these, you may be able to relate to very few of them, but we're all different. And that's why it's so hard to diagnose ADHD. Okay, so the first thing that I forgot to mention is when you're asking, could I have ADHD? Okay, one of the symptoms is, did you have problems with transitions? And by that, I mean from grade school to junior high school, from junior high school to high school. This is the big one, from high school to college. Do you have trouble getting started on things? Do you move a lot? Are you constantly fidgeting? Do you find that you often have to reread a paragraph or an entire page because you forgot that you're reading? Because you start getting in your head and you're daydreaming or whatever. Are you chronically late no matter how much time you give? Do you struggle to memorize most everything? Do you have trouble putting together your thoughts when you write, like organizing your thoughts? It's not so much the writing, but it's organizing your thoughts before you write. Do you lose track of time when you're interested in what you're doing? Do you get into this hyper-focus mode? Are you disorganized? Or are you constantly, I'm kind of OCD, I think, because my brain is so disorganized, my surroundings have to be very organized or I can't think. I really can't think. Are you attracted to products that help to organize you? Day planners, calendars, organizer apps, Post-it notes, Trello, Evernote, but you find it difficult to use them consistently. That is so me. I buy everything, but I've got Post-it notes everywhere. And I do have notebooks, but I never open them up. I write in them, but I never open them up. I don't know where I'm going to find anything. Are you a perfectionist? Do you talk really fast? Do people have trouble following your train of thought? Are you always trying to change something? Your house, your job, paint colors on the walls, placement of furniture. Like you like change. You always feel like you need to move forward. Do you have a hard time relaxing? Are you excessively impatient? Do you often get excited by a new idea or project and then lose interest and not follow through? More than most people, do you hate waiting in line? Are you incapable of reading directions? Do you have a temper, but just as quickly as you lose it, you're fine again? So you walk back in 15 minutes later and everybody's mad at you and you're like, what's the big deal? I can't even remember what I was upset about. Do you have trouble keeping secrets? Do you find it really difficult to follow lists, although heaven knows you constantly try? Do you start working on a project and suddenly find yourself an hour later in a completely different room working on something that was not planned? Do you have a hard time reading a book all the way through? Have you been at fault in 4 or more car accidents? I've had a number, not big ones, but I've had a number of car accidents. Are you bad with money? Do you let the bank balance your checkbook? I think I told you about that last time. I had 2 checkbooks and I just kind of waited until one was a mess and then I would use the other one and I would just kind of go back and forth. Do you find it difficult to keep an updated contact list? Like Christmas cards? Oh my God. Do you work best in short spurts? Do you find you often get depressed after a success? I call this post-final depression. Do you feel like you're not living up to your full potential? You've never done enough. And I totally have this, the imposter complex. And I've really over the years thought about why is that? And I think part of it is, I heard an expert talking about this and her comment was, well, you can't remember all the successes you've had if they're not like sitting right in front of you, right? But I think we're also high stimulation people and we realize that we only have one life and we have so many interests and there's so much we want to do and time's passing. And I just find that so stressful, and then the idea that our outside doesn't match our inside. Is it difficult for you to pay attention when someone has trouble getting to the point? Yeah. And the horrifying thing is I have trouble getting to the point. And so I'm irritated with myself when I hear myself talk at times. Are you a chronic researcher? Are you always looking for more options, better ways of doing things? Does small talk bore you? Do you find nature calming? Do you tune out? Do you space out a lot? Do you go into your own fantasy world? More than most people, do you feel like it's hard for you to make yourself understood? Do you have a hard time tolerating frustration? Are you a big worrier? Do you overthink everything? Were you a daydreamer in school? And have you ever been described as needy? Even if you're easily distracted, are there times where you're so focused it's crazy? You're hyper-focused. Number 2, are you a lifelong learner and just endlessly inquisitive? There's so much that you're interested in. And when you're interested, you're really interested. Are you good in a crisis? Do you notice what others don't? You can make really quick decisions. Everyone else is falling apart, but you're totally in control. Do you tend to approach problems intuitively? I always call this living my life through Braille. I sort of feel like I feel my way through Braille using my intuition because I can't always trust my brain. Do you love change? Are you always noticing and making connections? Are you an explorer? Are you always discovering? Are you enthusiastic? Even when you're frustrated, even when you're down, there's just this little seed in there. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to get up again and I'm going to go for it. You're tenacious. Are you a person of high integrity? Above all kinds of people. And even though we can be flaky, we can forget about appointments, we can, think we put something on our calendar and we don't. I just find people with ADHD to have so much integrity and authenticity. They mess up. They're the ones who just admit that they messed up. Are you much more effective when you're your own boss? Do you have trouble assessing the impact you have on others? Are you a hard worker when it's your idea? It has to be your idea. Do you know that you're a lot smarter than you're often able to demonstrate? Are you drawn to high stimulation people, careers, and activities? Careers like firemen, military journalists. Can you imagine being a journalist in a war zone? Every time I look at those guys, Lisa Ling, she's got ADHD. Air traffic controllers, ER doctors, EMTs, police officers, public defenders, chefs, politicians, nurses. Are you in the trades? So what we need is we need to be able to move and we need variety to be happy in a career. Are you driven? Okay, this was huge for me. I never thought of being driven as being hyperactive. I am incredibly driven, and drivenness is a form of hyperactivity. Do you find you need to exercise? For our inattentive sisters, sometimes they actually hate exercise, but they know they feel better when they do it. Are you an entrepreneur? If you're an entrepreneur, there's a 4 to 6 times higher likelihood. Oh my God, it's 1:15. There's a 4 to 6 times higher likelihood that you have ADHD. You're going to love this one, Mandy. Are you an idea machine? Even scientists now agree that one of our biggest strengths is ideation. Are you exceptionally intuitive? There's something called interpersonal intuition, which that's when I really said, okay, this ADHD thing, I've got to own it. And interpersonal intuition is when you can walk into a room, people don't even need to say anything, and you know what's going on. Are you a maverick? Is being original important to you? Are you more creative or imaginative than most people? Are you usually eager to try something new? Do you love to travel? Do you get the gist of things more quickly than most people? You kind of just put these disparate things together and know without listening to the whole thing what someone's trying to say. Do you laugh a lot? Okay, and this is the big one. Do you look younger than your age? And our 3 subtypes of ADHD, hyperactive impulsive, inattentive, combined type, which is the type that, you have all of these subtypes have symptoms in common. What they have in common is you're motivated by interest, not importance. You're easily distracted and you have trouble paying attention to detail that you don't care about. So I hope that gives you kind of a overview, I guess, for lack of a better word, of what the symptoms of ADHD can and do look like for women. If you think I've missed something, I would love for you to pop into the comments or, create a separate post. Maybe that's what we need to do because this is probably going to be quite long. In many ways, I think women get the brunt of the responsibilities once they become mothers, right? They are coordinating, they're organizing, they're taking care of all the administrative details, all the paperwork for the schools. And this is often when ADD kind of pops up in women's lives and they go off the rails, where all of a sudden they realize, oh my God, I am not coping at all. So these are some of the symptoms that I have been able to come up with in my life that I've also seen in other women. And I would love to know what you think. Do you agree? Are there some symptoms that I've missed? I would love to hear about them. I want to give you kind of a baseline where you can start. Okay? Anyway, thank you everybody and have a great day.